Welcome back, everyone, to the Gather Poetry podcast. I have an incredibly exciting guest with me today. Please join me in welcoming Hannah Rosenberg. Hannah, how are you feeling today? How's your summer been? How are you settling in?
I'm feeling great. I'm so excited to be here to chat with you. I know we've gotten to talk offline and share our writing, but I'm so excited to be able to talk to you here today.
It feels a long time coming. I remember stumbling early on, maybe even end of last year, I think is when I sort of discovered your writing on
Mhm.
Instagram. And immediately I had the sentiment that I think most people are going to feel when they read your work, both online and also now in your forthcoming collection. And the sentiment is the title of your book, which is, oh my God, same. I'm curious how that title sort of came to you, and if maybe it was something that you've held on to from the beginning of your writing journey, and it's kind of developed, or was it a later thought? That sentiment of feeling like sameness with another person and connecting with
Yeah.
writing, has that always been with you since the beginning?
Yeah. Um, oh gosh. So a few things come to mind. Um, I think that the feeling that I started getting once I did start sharing my writing online initially was like that surprise feeling of like, oh my gosh, when people read my poems and respond to me and say like same or like you're like someone has said like it feels like you're writing something that's in my head and then I feel seen right back, right, because I'm writing something vulnerable too. And so that feeling of sameness, even though we don't live the same lives, we don't all have the same experiences, but we all have the same like human emotions. And so that feeling of like same that I got from sharing writing and I'm hoping people get from reading my writing, that has just been pervasive throughout my kind of entire experience of sharing writing online. Um, and then the poem, yeah, it was actually one of the first poems that or I think it was the first poem that went, I guess, mini viral. So people started sharing it a lot. And this was several years after I started sharing online. And it was actually not the first time I had shared that poem. The poem initially was called Resolutions. And it was something I wrote like right after or like around a New Year's, either the
Mhm.
year before or prior to that. And then I kept kind of workshopping the poem and re-put it on my account as same and then people started resonating with it and sharing it a lot, so it's always been such a special poem to me and also such a special feeling. And like you said, I really hope that that's what people feel when they read my work. I think the biggest compliment someone can give me isn't like, oh my gosh, your poetry is incredible, but like I feel really seen and heard by your writing. And so that's my goal with sharing it.
Mm. What an absolutely beautiful gift, I think, to give other people is a moment of feeling seen and a moment of feeling heard. Let's walk backwards a little bit before you started sharing your work online. So, um, were you like the type of were you growing up the type of child who loved to read stories? Were you writing young on, or was that a love that you discovered later? Or some people even describe poetry as having like poetry found me.
Mm.
Do you feel like you found it, or that it found you? Oops,
Yeah.
hit my mic. um, uh, do you remember perhaps the moment in your life where you unlocked something and you're like, this might be for me. This might be
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I always loved writing and reading as a kid, reading stories and writing stories. I remember the specific moment where I remember like feeling this like click with poetry was in senior year of high school. We did a unit on poetry and poems, and I think like the first half of the unit was the technical stuff, and that I was like, okay, like metaphor, simile, iambic pentameter, and then we got into the workshoppy part of the unit where we got to read a lot of poems and then write our own poetry. And I remember just falling in love with it. Like I remember writing poems in class and then continuing to write outside of class. I remember sitting in an econ class during my senior year and like writing poems in the margins of my notebook when I was supposed to be paying attention in class. And I think that that's, I always say, like, if you want to know what you're passionate about, think about what you do when you're supposed to be doing something else. And that was definitely true for me with writing. Um, and so I always loved it. I think, you know, when I was a senior in high school and I would like I told my parents are very supportive and write themselves. And so they, especially my mom, like she was so supportive and encouraging. But I think when you tell other people like, oh, I love writing poetry, especially as a younger kid, people are like, oh, that's so sweet, like that's cute. But not like, oh, that could be something that you could do for your entire life or like a career you could have. um and even now, it's so I think
Mhm,
I kind of thought of it as like, okay, maybe this is something I'll do for myself. But always continued after that to want to write and want to write a book. And I think I thought, okay, I have to write a book, maybe I have to write a novel or a book of essays, and I'll just keep poetry as my own thing that I do for myself because it helps me process
mhm,
life around me. And then reading it too, I mean, I think that, you know and I'm sure you felt like this, and a lot of people listening, when you read a poem that you connect with, it feels like this magical gift that is able to say something to you that no other type of writing can. And that's how I felt reading poems that I connect with, and reading poems that I love. It's just a way of writing that you can't, like, there's no other way to say it other than in the poem. And so I've always found that it's so special, such a special like art form to be able to experience both as a writer and a reader.
yeah, absolutely. I think what you're getting at is this idea that it's both deeply personal and also mysterious at the same time.
Hmm.
And like no
Yeah.
other art form really does that beautifully. Like a
Yeah.
novel, there's so much space, right? But
Hmm.
with a poem, we're reduced to a few stanzas or a few pages even sometimes. And
Hmm.
so we have to both be precise and also aloof and mysterious at the same time.
Hmm.
And I think you do that so well though, because I think your poems are universal in the sense that a lot of people would be able to read them and understand them, but they're not by any means sort of like a transparent, overarching sense to them. I think there's these beautiful moments of vulnerability and like precision. I think that's the word that I kept coming away with your poems is just like you cut precisely with your words in the best way possible. I'm like, oh, if you're kind of cutting me, you're gonna, um, excuse me. Um, I think that gift you're talking about, I was thinking about it as you were talking about it, like the gift you were giving to your readers when when they feel and see you in those poems and you feel and see them in those poems. Do you think that you gave yourself that gift when you started sharing it online? Or like what happened there? What made you want to say, these are not going to be private anymore. I would like to share these. Walk us through like your thought process behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, like I kind of discovered this really specific love for poetry when I was 17. And then, kind of fast forward through the rest of high school, college, my early 20s, I I always had, like, writing is something that I want to do. Like, I want to find myself a way back to writing. And so I would take writing workshops and, poetry workshops, or like essay workshops, um or even, fiction writing. And I had like a number of blogs that I started on different things. And and I even actually I applied to MFA programs for poetry when I was 20, like 23, didn't get into them. So I was like, okay, well, I guess it's just something I'll do as a hobby. And in my like 20s, throughout my 20s, I was always like, maybe I'll write, I want to write a novel, maybe I'll write a novel, or again, like maybe I'll write a memoir. And so I was always starting things and kind of working on them. But again, like, poetry was always what I would come back to when I was experiencing something that I wanted to capture. And so it was like my own personal blog, kind of.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of came together. So when COVID happened, March of 2020, and all of our collective worlds like changed dramatically.
Mhm.
I remember this really specific moment. It was like the week of shutdown, and I was living in Boston at the time.
Mhm.
And I went from, going into work every day and having this really busy job. And I was teaching theater at that time to kids. So I had like my day job. And then in the evenings, I was part of a community theater and was teaching. And I lived with my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, and we had a really busy social life. And we went from all of this to like almost never being home to then, one day just like having no plans, nothing to do, nowhere to go, and just all of this empty time. And I
Mhm.
remember sitting down, it was like a Friday night, and at the very beginning of COVID, and sitting down, I think Nikhil, my husband, he was like working on something on his computer, finishing up. And I sat down in our bed and I opened up my laptop and I just started writing. And the type of writing that came out was poetry and prose, the type of writing I do. And so I kind of quickly decided, okay, this is going to be, this is a challenging time for all of us. I
Mhm.
need like a creative outlet and a creative project to work on. And so I decided that I was going to start writing every day, writing poetry every day. And initially, I thought, okay, I'm going to submit it to poetry journals and poetry magazines, and that's kind of going to be like my project, over the next few months to try to get some of my poems published. And um, like anyone who's done that before, it's a really hard process and you don't hear back a lot, or at least I didn't. You know, I I would submit like every week and rarely hear back, or a few really small grassroots journals published my poems and I was like so happy. Um and then kind of later, I guess later on in the summer, and I'd been writing like every day, and it was filling me with a lot of like it was like helping me. I think it was just really good for my mental health to like have this outlet and to be able to write. And and later on this summer, I listened to a podcast. It was a podcast called "Don't Keep Your Day Job," and I think it's now changed like titles, but that's what it was called at the time. And the host Kathy was interviewing this artist that goes by Amy Tangerine, and she does like these beautiful. She's like a visual artist.
Mhm.
Um, and she was talking about how when she was building up her portfolio, she shared, she had some account, I don't know, I don't think it was Instagram, but it was some social media account where she would share a piece of her art every Monday, because Mondays were her like blah day. And so, and it forced her to both like produce and share without like monitoring herself, because I feel like writers and artists were always like, it's not ready, it's not final.
Mhm.
And so that story really stuck with me. And so I remember going home and telling Nikhil, like, okay, I'm gonna start an Instagram and I'm gonna share a poem every week, every Monday, because Mondays also I didn't like I'm gonna share one every Monday for a year. And that's like gonna be my creative project.
Wow.
Um and I started doing that. Like I started that in August of 2020, and I would work on a poem every week, and then I
Mhm.
would force myself to share it. And I kind of like I told myself, it doesn't have to be final. Like this is a blog, so you're sharing whatever you have at that point, and that's what I did. And I even to this day, like I'll share something and go back and edit it and edit it. Like I'm never like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be the final version, because I don't think anything's ever the final version.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I just kept doing it because I loved it, and it was really, I mean, I think it changed my life for the better. So yeah.
Mhm. I literally have there's like shivers down my spine as you're talking about it. Because I think what you're saying is going to resonate with a lot of creative people um, who need to give themselves permission to stop expecting perfection and just to kind of show up with the way that we are. And
Mhm,
I love that this ties into the story you were talking about the poem, where the title of that poem changed from the
mhm.
first time you shared it
Yeah,
to the second time you shared it.
yeah,
And the first version was a beautiful version, but it wasn't the final version. And the second version, maybe there's another version out there somewhere one
yeah.
day. We never know, right? We never
Mhm,
know. Um, but just the ability to show up as we are and sort of be like, screw it. Like the response here is not what I'm looking for. It's a documentation of a creation. Like
Mhm.
we are creating every week, and so we will document our creation every week and
Oh, totally. Yeah. And
your
I
life.
and I think that it's like there's a poet Kate Bear. You
Yeah.
probably know her. Yeah, everyone knows her. Yes, and she writes beautiful things and shares online. Shares on Instagram, and she shared at least one story about this, but I feel like she shared it several times. It's like sharing your art is embarrassing, and like promoting yourself is embarrassing. It's all embarrassing, and so you just have to be like okay with it. Like it's not like you have to kind of like lose your like want to be cool. And I think that I had to kind of go through that. Like I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, I'm sharing poems. And second of all, I'm sharing on Instagram. So like there's so much things for people to be like, oh, like ick. But I
Yeah.
think that I kind of had to say like, well, if one person resonates with this, that's better than the 10 people that are like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing that you're doing this, or like this is that you have this is like, and I'm sure people said that. I didn't hear that a lot, but I'm sure. But I mean, my friends were so supportive, and they were the ones following me at the beginning and sharing my stuff at the beginning. But I think I had to get over that in my head that like everything that things had to be perfect, or like I think I had a thought that I had to have a higher power like tell me that my writing was good enough to share. And that's I
Mm,
think why I was like going to journals first before I was like, you know what, no, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it online and share myself.
yeah.
um and it ended up being a beautiful thing, so yeah.
Such a beautiful thing. Thoughts come to mind right away so much. What you're saying is delicious, and I want to chew on it and just like marinate in it because it's so good. And I think it's just these are just such good reminders for creatives of all kinds, writers, artists, music producers. Like I'm sure as creatives, we all have these sort of like shared challenges. One of my favorite writers, Ocean Vuong, a poet and a novelist,
Yes.
he recently did an interview on Instagram. There's a clip of him, and he talks about the idea of cringe culture and
Mhm.
how the cost of connection or the cost of being successful in your field is usually to be cringy.
Mhm.
And as a society, we've kind of used that word as a bad thing. And he
Mhm.
described it as simply like having the passion to try. And
Oh, I love that.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm like, I just, and what a better legacy to leave for like children. Like, I don't have children yet, but if,
Yeah.
if my kids one day say, like, mom
Mhm.
tried hard, like, I think
Yeah.
that's was a beautiful thing. Like,
Yeah. Oh
that's,
my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That like makes me feel like crying. It's like you care enough about something, and that's like so wonderful. Like that's like a gift that life has given you, that you care about enough about something to for it to overcome your feelings of like, what if people think this is cringe, or what if what will people say? That
yeah,
idea.
absolutely. Speaking of things that sort of like come together beautifully, as we've been chatting, I keep coming back to one thought, Hannah, and the one thing that I love the most for you in all of this is that you were talking about how poetry was kind of like your first love and the thing that you ran towards, but you thought maybe that would be a private hobby and your first book might be a novel or a
Mhm.
collection of essays.
Mhm.
And your debut collection is,
Mhm.
or your debut book is a
Mhm.
collection of poems. And
Mhm.
I love that for you. I think it's the perfect way for the universe to show you that running after your first love
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
important and is worthwhile and lovely and I think like you've maybe perhaps manifested that in a way. Do you want to talk us through the story and the conception of the book? So we've arrived at sharing poems and finding connection between readers online, getting that feeling of like, wow, they understand me and I understand them.
Mhm.
Now, how does book come into it?
Mhm. Yeah. So I remember, like I said, in the summer of 2020, I started this what I called a poetry blog. So I started um, posting once a week, and even then, I was like, "Ooh, that would be really cool if I could write, like put together a book someday, or like write a book someday." And so it was definitely something that I wanted to do, but had absolutely no idea how to do it, and no idea how to go about it. So I think for the first, I mean, it's like hard to remember timeline exactly, but the first at least like year or two, I was just like, okay, let me just work on my craft. Let me work on building a community of people, of readers. And I didn't really do anything to like actively go after a book. I just had it as this dream, like this dream that will, like hopefully come true someday. But like definitely was manifesting. I actually like I have a I'm not like someone who like talks about like manifesting all the time, but I have a vision board that my husband and I did. I think it was like 2021. It was like a New Year's 2021 around that time. And we wrote down like our visions for the future. And I drew like a book with the title Same on it. And so
No.
like, and I like still have it. I know. So it's like, I'm like, oh, like that's like, and I don't know, like, I don't know how much I believe in that or not, but I think that when you start saying things to people, and I think kind of going back to like the cringe thing, I think I started telling people I really wanted to write a book. And it's because at first I was, I was sharing and everything, and but still hanging on to that idea of like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this to like, yeah, just doing it to to do
Yeah.
it because I love it. And trying to kind of like, I think I was hiding behind like my fear of people, like what will they think if I say, oh, I really care about writing a book, I really want this to happen, and then kind of trying to overcome that and saying it out loud that I really wanted to write one. And I do think when you start saying things out loud, you start acting differently, maybe. I don't know, like something along those lines. Um so then I guess around the time my daughter was born, or even like maybe a little before that, she was born in spring of 2023, I started being like, okay, let me try to explore how I could make a book happen.
Yeah.
And did a lot of research online, like listened to podcasts, and was like, okay, I have to get an agent. Like that's the first step. And so I started reaching out to agents. And it was very similar to, again, any writer. It's very similar, at least in my experience, to the journals. Like I just didn't hear back from a lot of people, or like it was hard for me to navigate, because poetry is, it's a unique form of writing. So it wasn't like every agency had someone who was like dying to get a poetry book, and
Yeah.
you have to look for someone who's a match. And so yeah, it just wasn't, I had like a big spreadsheet, just wasn't really hearing back. Um and but it's continuing to share my writing, and to and I was selling prints at that time. I started selling prints. And um so I guess I went back to my full-time job after maternity leave. And in my, I had kind of made this decision that like, let me see how it is to go back to work. But if I'm not like happy with the decision once I go back, then maybe I'll take some time off. And like then I was like, and simultaneously maybe I'll then focus some time um on writing more, and trying to get an agent and trying to sell a book. So that was kind of my plan. And I did go back to work in the fall of 2023, and kind of pretty soon after decided like I don't think this is for me right now. I'm going to take some time off. And so had this plan in the beginning of January to leave my full-time job, to put in my notice. And at the beginning of December, and this had never happened to me before. Like this wasn't this wasn't something that had happened, and I just, but in the beginning of December of of 2023, in 1 week, two editors reached out to me on
Oh my
Instagram. One editor from Macmillan, Sarah Canton, and then an editor from HarperCollins UK,
God.
Harriet Prideaux. And both of them, I think this story is really cool because both of them, again, like they weren't looking for, like, I don't think they were looking for like the next poet, but they had both were also on maternity leave with their first child. And so their friends had been sending them my poems, like not as like, oh, look at this author, potential author, but just like, here's a poem I think you'll connect with. Um, which I love because like that, I was writing what my life was at that time. And so basically I ended up through connecting with them, I ended up connecting to my now agent,
Wow.
Ariel, and then at UTA. And then I worked on the submission process, like the manuscript, um, and then ended up signing with both of them. So Macmillan is publishing the book in the in US and Canada, and HarperCollins UK is publishing it in the UK. So it was really cool. Like, yeah, it was a cool story, like how that ended up happening. Not something that not something I expected. And also, yeah, like kind of it was just from me continuing to, I think, post and share and kind of like be active on the community that I had created.
Oh my goodness. I love this story so much. You know what I love most about it is that the connection to your poetry was actually the thing that like sort of
Yeah.
facilitated all of this because
Mhm.
I think like maybe there were moments of like that those editors where they felt like
Mhm.
same. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
the power of same is
Mhm.
like enough, enough to create connections that end up in a wonderful book. And I
Yeah.
speaks to the power of connection within poetry. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes I feel like maybe it's like less about the traditional modes of the way that we've always done things, like submitting to
Yeah.
journal and submitting to agents. I remember when I was trying to find an agent early 2024, I think
Mhm.
last year, before I signed with my agent. Um, I was having the same experience. Like
Yeah.
it was just um like there was radio silence,
Yeah.
and because
Mhm.
I think it's hard to sell poetry and
Mhm.
it's hard to sell
Yeah.
books in general, but poetry
Mhm.
is really hard to
Mhm.
sell.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I connected with my agent because we had DM'd on Instagram before. Like so
Oh, yes. Yeah.
she recognized me and then that's how we ended up, working.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
these
amazing.
unexpected connections that
Mhm.
you kind of have to almost be on sort of on the lookout for, but at the same time, I think when you're just authentically living your life and sort of embracing that cringeness a little bit, then
Yeah.
these connections sort of like open up to you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have anything like let's say there's a writer listening right now that is doing similar things, like they're
Mhm.
sharing their work online
Mhm.
and they have this beautiful dream that they're manifesting of
Mhm.
a book.
Mhm.
um, Maybe not advice that you want to give them, but
Mhm.
just like words of encouragement or
Mhm.
anything that you think would have really helped you in your journey to just continue showing up as your
Yeah.
authentic self.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I was meant to say this earlier, kind of around the same thing, the poem same, but so I think, and also like around the cringe and like sharing, I think that also initially I kind of thought like, okay, I share a poem once and then it's out there and it's out there. And like, if people find it, they find it, but like, I've already shared it. So I can't, I don't know. I feel weird about sharing it again. And I think that number one, like I kind of had to be like, no, like you can share. First of all, the internet is a crazy, confusing place, and it's. I have no idea how the algorithm works. Like I truly don't
No.
understand anything. I have no more information than I feel like I had when I started.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know like how people see things and when they see things, but I think that this idea that like you can keep sharing what you shared before, you never know who's going to see it. I think one example that I have is like as I was building my community, I have a poem Marriage of Friends, and I think that's probably been the one that's been shared the most. Like I love writing about friendship, love. It's very like important in my in my identity and my writing world. But so I shared Marriage of Friends one year on Valentine's Day, which is like the day before Valentine's Day. I don't know if you're familiar with Parks and Rec and like
Oh,
Leslie. Okay. And so I shared it. And I think like, I don't know, like not to be like focused on like likes, but I think it had like under 100 likes. And so this was
mhm.
like one year.
Yeah.
The next year I shared it again. This is like a whole year later. Same
Yeah.
poem, nothing had changed, same day. And that
Mhm.
day it was like celebrities started sharing it, like Blake Lively shared it with like, which grew my audience. Like, I mean, she like really helped me grow my audience around that time. I think I grew by like, and so I had all these new readers there.
Yeah.
It was like, and and it was
Wow.
the exact same poem, exact same day. I had done nothing different. And so I think like, yeah, just around that idea of like keep shit, like just because you
Mhm.
put something out there once and like people either don't like it or don't notice it doesn't mean that
Mm.
that's it for, like that's it for that piece. Like you should keep sharing it. Like it that, you could, it could be it could turn into something amazing. If you like it, like keep putting it out there. And that's I feel like that's what I would encourage people to do that I felt like took me some time to feel like
Mm.
to get over that to talk about all the cringe, to get over that specific cringe.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. I resonate with that so much, and I think, like, I agree with you wholeheartedly, like, I have no
Mhm.
idea what the algorithm is. I don't know
I
how
don't
it
know who
changes. I
does.
don't know
Yeah.
what like, I have no none of
Yeah.
us have any insider information.
No.
But yeah, and it like, the way that, your poem is sent out and reached and people resonate with it
Mhm.
can completely change depending on the day and the time. So
Totally.
maybe, like,
Mhm.
what I'm hearing is spend a lot less energy on focusing on how to try to figure it out and a lot more energy on just putting out the things that you love.
Yeah.
And eventually it will find the right people. And maybe that poem will find the right people a year later on the exact same
Totally.
day of all people. Like,
Totally. Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that story so much.
Just
Like Blake
because you're
Lively.
like yeah. Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just because you shared it once and like crickets, like that doesn't mean that doesn't say anything about the piece. That just means like, you know, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what that means, but you should keep sharing it.
Yeah, I think Instagram is not a, a good barometer for good poetry, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, I think there's a lot of good poetry on Instagram, but I don't think it's a good differentiator. Like, I can't tell, you
Yeah.
know.
And not
Um,
even just Instagram, like even if you're submitting to journals or you're,
mhm,
like or even like in my, like in my case, like I applied to like 3 MFA programs and didn't get into them. And then I was like, okay, well, I must not be MFA worthy. Like you
mhm,
just because you get a no, like that says nothing about your potential or like what you're putting out there. Like you could, and I think that that's so important for people to internalize. I mean, I'm still like I have not arrived yet. Like I'm still trying to internalize that too. But yeah, just hopefully if someone hears this, it gives them inspiration to keep trying and keep putting out their work.
absolutely. I think it's like a daily thing. And when you receive a no, it is proof that you're trying. And
Hmm.
like, I think that's just what being an author and being a writer is.
Yep.
It's just trying. It's trying to create beautiful things with our
Hmm.
words, trying
Hmm.
to decipher meaning out of this world and like tap into something mysterious and beautiful and put it onto the page. And like, I don't think we ever fully like arrive at like you said at that sort of like end goal. It's just it's a
Hmm.
lifelong journey, and I love this lifelong journey because it's not something that we have to retire out of. We can do
Hmm.
this until the day we die, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yes. I know. I know. It's like you want to keep doing it. You want to keep working. You want to keep doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's
exactly.
what I mean. I feel like I've heard celebrities that I would be like, oh, they must like these are celebrities that everyone knows. And then they're talking about like being nervous to go into an interview or like to get their next job. And you're like, oh, okay, like everyone has this. Everyone feels this anxiety of like, the imposter syndrome. And so yeah, you just have to keep going, keep doing it.
100%, absolutely. Shifting back a little bit towards your book, one of my favorite parts about reading your book was it felt to me like as I was reading it, one of my favorite things about poetry is pacing. And I think there's a lot of power when a poet understands pacing in their book. And to me, reading your book felt like it was an intentional Sunday morning. And it
Mhm,
felt like there were like moments for me to really digest and sort of sit on a poem and sort of reflect on it. And like your book to me doesn't feel rushed at all. It feels very intentionally like almost like a linger, maybe is the right word. And so I'm curious, if that comes across, maybe if you've heard that from other people or if that was something that was intentional. I
mm,
think like in a world of things that are so rushed and the world moves so slow, it was like the most delicious respite to be inside your book and just
mhm.
it felt like a Sunday morning to me,
Yeah,
Hannah.
thank
So I'm
you.
curious if that was part of the intentional sort of like
Mm,
pacing in your book as you were writing
mm,
it, and what your thoughts are on that kind of.
mm. Oh, thank you for saying that. So I don't know if I was intentional in like that specific way, although maybe it was like subconsciously, I was thinking like that. I think it's interesting that you're saying that because it was very much like one moment in time, right? Like I wrote the book between, I, I guess, so I started, I guess the like excerpts that I submitted in spring of 2024, and then I finished the whole book in fall of 2024. So like at
Wow.
most 6 months that I was writing it. And the book is split up into sections, and so it's, for our younger selves, for our
Yeah.
friends, for the ones we date and marry, for our families, for our bodies, for our minds, and for our children. And so a lot of the poems were looking back on my life or reflecting on things. And I know you write a lot about that as well. But then some of them were like very present, especially, um, the for the ones we date and marry, and for the ones for our children, and for our bodies and minds, because those are things that, are very, very present right now. Um, and, I am a new mom. I was a new mom when I was writing it. And so, that kind of lingering, I think, probably is reflected in that, that I was writing about what I was experiencing at the time. Um, and and I hope that people, regardless um of if they're married, if they're coupled, if they have children, if they don't have children, less so like resonate with, oh, same, like I feel exactly the same because I've had this exact same experience, but also feel same as like, oh, these like relational emotions
Mhm.
feel familiar to me, or it feels um and that's how I am as a reader. I loved reading like parent or like motherhood memoirs before I had kids, because I'm not just like a mom, like I'm a child, or like I have parents. And I love hearing about relationships, like even outside of like my writing. I love talking about relationships, and that obviously is very present in my writing, but that's just who I am as a person. So yeah, I think that probably what you're kind of picking up on is that it was written in a moment in time, and it was like lingering in that time in my life. So yeah, I
So
don't know.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I completely resonate with, like, some of my favorite poems are
Mhm,
motherhood poems, and,
mhm,
in our writing community gather, we have a
mhm,
lot of moms who write with us, and I
mhm.
always say, like, it's over for everyone once I start writing motherhood poems. It's a joke, obviously, but,
Yeah.
I when I read a really delightful,
Mhm,
beautiful poem
mhm,
about motherhood or even an experience that I haven't been a part of, I
mhm,
think it makes me think about possibility, and I
mhm,
often think about, like, when that will be me,
mhm,
when I will be writing about that, or even, yeah, we can go backwards too, like,
mhm,
um, when we were children, or even sometimes I read a motherhood poem and I think about my inner child and, like,
mhm.
mothering my inner child, and
Yeah.
there's just, as a poet, we think in metaphors, so you can kind of, like, look
Yeah.
at poems and be like,
Mhm.
like, I can extrapolate and put myself in this poem
Totally.
and say same. Um,
Totally. Yeah, one of my favorite poems, like way before I had my daughter, was it's a poem by Marie Howe, called Hurry. I don't know
I
if
love
you're
that
familiar with
poem.
it. I love it. Yeah. And it's like it's totally about this experience of like on this like surface, a mother and her young daughter, and kind of hurrying through the day. But I mean, it's just so, again, like it's like this beautiful human experience and human emotions and relational poem that I think can speak to anyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were sectioning your book and creating, like,
Mhm,
each section is a different kind of relationship, or even
mhm,
like a sort of different entity. As
mhm,
you were sectioning your poems and writing for the different sections,
mhm.
was there anything that really surprised you, or you thought like a section was going to turn out a certain way and then it ended up not turning out that way, or like maybe one that was really challenging for you?
Yeah, so I didn't start the book out thinking of like the sections. I think so when I started writing the book, I kind of was a little worried because I was like, I'm so used to writing something and sharing and writing and sharing and not like sticking on theme or, having these themes. So I kind of at the beginning gave myself the freedom to just start writing and seeing like what happened with it. Like, where did I get any ideas or, thoughts about how I wanted to frame the book? And at the beginning, it was not like I didn't have this idea of the of the different sections, like for different types of relationships or for different people. Um, and I think and so like what I started doing is I would like work on a draft of a poem and then I would kind of categorize it in like I had a spreadsheet where I was like, okay, maybe this would fit here. And then the sections just like started forming themselves. Like I was like, okay, these are all poems that like kind of fall into like me writing to my younger self or like, me writing about childhood or, two children and then like friendship poems. And then these are the poems that I'm writing about my relationship and my marriage. And so
Mhm.
it kind of came about like that way. I think I definitely had different sections. Like there's versions of earlier versions where they were, I think at one point there were like 10 sections maybe. And then kind of reformatted them. So there was definitely an evolution.
Yeah.
But it just kind of fell into what it is now. And I definitely think I say this in the forward of the book, like they could a lot of them could fit in different sections too, because they're all, everything's always overlapping. But it's kind of how it fit together. And then I would like the last section of every or the last poem of every section kind of to me would be like the intro to the next section, like it kind of fit in like that. So that's at least how I ended up envisioning it and how it went on. And I didn't like worry too much about like are there too many poems in this? Like it wasn't like I had like, okay, I have 10 poems. It just kind of was what it was. And hopefully hopefully it ends up working out. But I love how, I love how it ended up from my perspective.
I think it's absolutely perfect. And why I say that is because the evolution of reading the poems in from beginning to end, which was my first reading of your book,
Mhm,
like it feels like we get these little miniature arcs in each
mhm,
section,
mhm,
but at the same time, like you're right, the last poem sort of flows into the next one,
mhm,
and so it is a beautiful read from beginning to end. But I can also see people going in for a second read and being like, I'm really in the mood to read like poems about love
mhm,
and about
mhm,
marriage, and then
mhm,
you have the sections you can go back to and sort of reference. So
mhm,
I think it's perfect for what poetry wants, which
mhm,
I always say like a good poem begs you to reread it. And I think a
mhm,
good poetry collection does the same thing. And you already have the reader set up to
mhm,
do that in the most perfect way. So I
mhm.
think it's genius. I love it so much.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping that it could be read as like front to back, like a story, and also, people could open a page and like read a poem just as a standalone.
yeah, absolutely. If there is a few feelings or maybe an emotion or a sentiment that you would like your readers to be left with at the end of the book, what would that be for you, Hannah?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think so. I talk a little about this at the beginning, um, and I feel like this is like the theme now of everything I'm saying. I think a lot of poets or writers, if someone called their poem a love poem, they would like cringe and be like, "Oh no, that's not. I don't want to be a poet who writes love poems." But I'm okay with it. Like I think even my poems are there's like so much. I have so much love in all of my poems for what I'm talking about. Even the poems that talk about things that are not great or that are hard. I have a lot of poems that are about trying to love my body more and trying to be more gentle with myself as a person, and a lot of that is really a struggle for me. And
Mm,
but at the end of the day, like it is a love story, right? Like that's
yeah.
kind of what all of our relationships are about. Even the one that we have with ourselves. And so I hope people feel like that sense of love throughout the book. And my dream is that people read it and like we said, like feel seen and heard, and also want to share it. Both
Mm,
like have it mean something to them, because I do believe like our relationship with ourselves is the most important, but also like want to take the words and share it with a parent or a sibling or a
mhm.
friend or their child or their partner, um and and have the words be less about like what I'm writing about and more about the emotion behind it and the relationship that they have with that person. Um, I think that's, the best thing that can happen as a writer when someone takes your words and it becomes their own. Like those words become something that they use to describe their life and their relationships and their love for someone.
Mm. I love that so much. It's like this almost bleeding out of connection in a good way. Like, you share it with a poem with another person and another person, and it's almost like everyone retains part ownership of that poem by the end of it.
Mhm,
Because it kind of becomes in a way their poem, like the
mhm,
meaning
yeah,
behind it anyways.
right, right,
I think
right.
it's
It becomes so much less about who wrote it and more about what it means to them and the person that they're sharing it with. And I think that's like again just the beauty of poetry, right? Like it really has the ability to do that.
Absolutely. As we're chatting about this right now, your book is not out yet, Hannah, but when this podcast goes live, it will be out. Um,
Yes.
Perhaps if you want to just give all of the listeners an opportunity to share maybe the best way we could order your book or the best way we can support you. Is there a place maybe we could get like a signed copy, or if you want to chat about like your book tour? I know you have a book tour coming
Yeah.
up. We hear about
Yes.
your exciting dates.
Yes.
Yeah, let us know how
Yeah.
we can connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So, I mean, I would love love if people, went to their local bookstores, ordered it. I love supporting, independent bookstores. I love, my local bookstores and I love when I'm traveling going to independent bookstores. So,
Me too.
absolutely love supporting them. I think that same should be available to order in almost every indie bookstore. You can also order it from the big distributors, Target, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Um, Really anywhere you can get books, it should be available. And then please follow me at Hannah Row Writes on Instagram. I'm still sharing sharing every week, multiple times a week now. Poetry blogging my life, and so I would love to have you join and reach out. I try to respond to every message and email. So if you reach out to me and I don't respond, that just means I didn't see it. So reach out again. Um, and then, yeah, I have a book tour. So by the time this podcast comes out, I should be on the road. So I'm going to
Yeah.
Boston, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, DC, and Charlottesville for now. And I'm hoping to add a few more spots too. So definitely stay tuned.
If you do decide to follow along on Hannah's journey, which I mean you will obviously, but you're in for a treat. Her poetry on your feed is wonderful and amazing, and I love Hannah that the practice of sharing your poetry was what started all of this, and you're still doing that. I think that's just like a testament to it is your one true love, your first love. And I'm really
Oh, totally. Yeah.
excited.
My husband he's like very entrepreneurial and really helps me like along kind of like the like business side of like you do have to market a book, you do have to sell it, and he's always like, okay, what are you going to do today? And I'm like, I just want to write something. Like I just want to write a poem, like I don't know. Which I guess that's the best thing then. you know
Absolutely, it is the
Yeah.
best thing. Same like Hannah said, it's available everywhere books are sold. It was one of my top reads this year by all accounts. It's a phenomenal poetry collection, and I can't wait to continue following you, Hannah, and seeing what you're up to. Um, Seeing maybe in the future if one day we like get a novel out of you, that would be phenomenal. Oh my gosh. um, it's been
Okay,
so
well,
interesting.
oh
Sorry.
no, it's been so lovely talking to you. I'm like now, okay, now on my manifestation list is I want to come to Toronto at some point and do a reading with you because I'm also a big fan of yours. So that let's add that to our to our vision boards too.
That sounds amazing. I hit me up anytime, honestly. That sounds wonderful. Truly a pleasure having you and chatting, Hannah. Thank you, everyone listening. I will have all of the links to order Hannah's book in the description of both of the Spotify podcast and also the YouTube podcast. This is a book that you don't want to miss. It's truly wonderful.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
Hope to chat again soon. Thanks so much, Hannah.
Thank you, Maria.